I not change that info? Oh. I got this piece. Go. All right. So today we're going to be doing some stream carving. However, no idea what I'm going to be carving. But I did find my box cutter. If anybody is currently watching, let me know how the sound levels are. Also, where is my sound mixer? Audio mixer, there we are. Get that going. Increase this just a little bit. There we go. Should be working. Okay. So, going to be carving one of these pieces, or potentially another if I turn it into a pillar, some sort of obelisk type thing. Don't think of that one. These two types. And that's for the first part real quick while let's think about the rest. I can show you guys how I make a D&D type well. So when I was making my well, I made it 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches because most wells are not exactly 5 feet in diameter. Instead, they could be a little bit more. So by doing this, it allows the well to be larger than your characters, so that way even your character could potentially fit down inside of it. For the DMs out there, you can also do the same thing in order to have a creature pop out. The well physically is large enough to house that type of creature. You can easily have it ambush your team. So first thing we're going to be doing with it is we gotta round off the edges. I'm gonna choose this as the base because this is kind of rough, and I can actually utilize that. So you gotta make your base, your well, relatively round. There are square wells, but that's up to your own personal aesthetic. I prefer the hexagon looking. And as I've said in a previous video, what I'm doing is I'm making the base by cutting slightly inward, where the thickness of how you want it to be stable, and then cut downward along the corner to create the hexagon shape. And once you have a hexagon shape, you can do it to each of those additional corners to make it quite a bit more round. I'm going to stick with the hexagon shape. However, I do want to bring it in just a little bit. I want the base to be wider than the actual level. Shave off a tiny piece here on each of the edges to give depth that I'm looking for along the face. And then I will shave off a little bit more of the corners to make it a little bit rounder. Okay. So it's still not perfectly hexagon, but that's actually okay because when these were made out of cobblestone, they could not find perfectly uniform pieces, so a wells would not actually be perfectly circle. It would be weirdly shaped. So from this point, you need to determine how high you want the stone wall part of your well to be, and then you'll just make a line or a note around there. So you can make sure you don't go too low, because what you're going to do now is you're going to find where you want the roof part of it, and I want this to be a thin roof over here and a thicker roof over there, showing a little bit of decay. So I'm going to cut in just a little bit. I'm going to be able to shave off the outside of where I wanted my stones to come up to, and then this, so this gap right here is actually going to be a empty space in the center and in between the corners, and the corners will be the wooden posts that hold up the roof. I want to do that with each side of the main 4 posts to provide a guideline for when I'm going to be carving to make the flat, or the empty areas, not flat areas. When it comes to these types, or this small of a sculpture, the tiniest cut can actually make a difference, because I'm making these slices so thin that I can see through them. You can see the darker background to them, and yet it is a clearly defined lines on there due to the small sizes. Okay, now that I have the 4 corners where my posts are going to be, I'm going to determine how thick I want the posts and go just a little bit inside that, so that way they're thicker than I originally want them to be. And then I'm cutting very carefully along towards the back, opposite side. I'll be doing this for both sides of each, that center gap, to make that empty space. Then cut along the roof section in the same manner. And along where these stones are going to be. So that way, and hopefully pull it right out. So just did that, and I need to do it again for this side, so that way I have 2 holes going that way. A little bit easier because you can actually see right through towards the center. You know when you actually puncture through. And of course, when doing this, always be extremely careful. This is a brand new box cutter that I purchased from a U-Haul. It is one of the best box cutters ever. Okay, and there we go. We now have your basic well shape. I am not sure where my tiny little scissors are. I'll find them in a minute. Okay. Throw the pieces up here. So now what I like to do is I like to shave down the posts to make them a little bit rounder. I just like the look of a round support post better than a square one. And it is as simple as shaving off the tiny corners as best you can, trying not to compromise their structural support. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys can see that very well, but this one is the one that I have carved into, and it is nice and rounded. And then you got the other ones, which are big, fat, chunkier. I will do this side over here, so that way, hopefully, I can show you 1/2 rounded, and then 1/2 with the squared off ones that were already there. Yeah, okay. So, here you have the original super chunky. This kind of looks like blocks that are holding it. And then you have the opposite side, which are the rounded ones. Has some definition to them. So once I do all 4, I should be able to see diagonally a lot better. Foggy. Because this is the rounded off side where you can see through, and then the other side is still white because it's all blocked off by the foam. So I am going to endeavor to round these ones off. pillar or pole? Okay, so this is after I have rounded off the poles or posts. This one's a little odd, but actually I'm going to leave it that way because of the decay that's also going on with the roof. Because if you look at the top part, I left that the jagged part of a foam, so that way it's a little bit more, I don't know, unusual. And give me just a second to see if I can find my tiny scissors, and I'll show you what I do to make the hole going down. Because unless you're a really good artist, I can make it look like there's a hole there. It's better for me to have a hole. Just one moment. Okay, so found my tiny scissors. Alright, now with the the actual downward hole of the well, you can shove these to the side a little bit with foam so you can have a smushed side and an exposed center. With your tiny scissors, you can do this with the box cutter too, but I'm going to use tiny scissors. You simply get to the width of your poles, push down a little bit at a 45-degree angle-ish. Make sure not to go all the way through, and then just cut that little V line. Make sure it's fully open, and then do this on each side. Okay, now by doing that, I'm just going to take some tweezers, so I got big fingers, pull out this little divot. Not too much. However, now when you look inside of there, there's actual depth in there. And because you did it the way, right, if you cut it at the single cuts on each side, it actually makes it look pretty smooth. And you can just add in blues on the inside of that if you want the well to be high, or black if you want it to be a deep well. And it is unusual for a well to be high on water levels. However, what if your location that this well in was being controlled or had a creature under control that could pump water higher, thus keeping them level and easy? So that is how I make this, and I'll show you the extra little bit of actually it's a little bit shorter than my other one. I'll show it to you anyways. If you want this to look more like cobblestone, you can actually make tiny little incisions going along both up and down and then sideways. And this allows it to have the additional texture of broken rocks. And as this one is a decayed one, I'm going to actually take a chunk out of one of the edges here to make it more decayed. And if you want to include this type of like decay into an adventure, it could be as simple as an annual event transports a small town backwards or forward in time, and if it goes backwards in time, then when they get there, everything could be decayed and all broken like. But when something happens that takes them back in time, you could bring out a nicer, fancier one and have a nice pristine, fresh on the day. Okay. So all I did was I just carved little tiny lines periodically around the sides. Now I'm going to carve lines across. I'm just doing this by slicing through it with the scissors and then going at a slight, maybe 45-degree angle, and then carving out the tiniest little powder. So much so that's hard for you to even see the pieces. But I'll show you once I am actually done with this, the effect of just that can do to styrofoam on the smaller scale. Okay, so I apologize about my dog barking. This is after I have carved out the cobblestone lines. So let's see if I can get that a little closer for you. So you have to look on the edges. See how it just pops out a little bit there. Over here, it's got a whole line going down. So by doing that, it allows whoever is painting these to actually have depth lines onto it. And as I said, I'm going to be indicating that this is a broken down well that let's see, do a snap out this way. Actually dropped it, so I'm gonna find, there it is. Okay, and then we will do a cut down this way, small incision along the bottom, so that way again rip it out to the side. Now because I did that, now it is obviously what a lot of people consider is damaged or broken, which is the purpose, because I will take this off to the side here and I will actually deepen the hole so that way when a player or a person looks into the side here, they will see the hole still. Just because a wall is broken on one side does not mean it's not fully operational underneath it. And there we go. Now you could cut this part off, but remember, most things when they get broken don't have those pieces removed unless someone else does it. So if you have a damaged wall on a perimeter of a castle, unless the castle is being upkept by guards and carpenters, those rocks from that wall will still be there. They're just going to be on the ground. So don't forget that if you're going to carve out a chunk, keep the extra bits for that purpose. Camera small. So, and there is my decayed and damaged well. Yeah, I should just put that up there. Now, what else can I make? Well, I have to make my coffee. That's unfortunate. Let's see what's going on over here. Okay. Awesome. I'm not sure what I want to do still. I guess I can make a basic pillar. There's always that option. If anybody has any suggestions on something that I could carve, that would be helpful. Archway? Okay. Let's see. Might be taller or shorter than that. No, sorry. Alright. So we shall do the archways that I'm aware of how to do. So for the archways, I will try and keep the thickness so that way it can support its own structure, but then at the about 3/4 mark it's got to start curving up towards the actual arch, as the exterior of this is going to be the actual arch bit, because this is about how much a D&D character would fit through. Yeah, there's a smaller one. Yeah, okay. A little easier to see. So I'll be shaving off these edges or these corners here, and then keeping the thickness at least that thick, probably a little bit thicker, so that way it's a thinner passageway through them. Which I will go into eyeball today. Okay, there's that base. And that base. Alright. So now we have the two base parts of where it's actually going to be standing off of. What I like to do is I like to go up the sides until about where it's going to be curving on the inside, which is lower than the outside. So I think that is about where it's going to be. That way you can see it's a little bit lower than the 3/4 mark. It's almost at the 1/3 mark. Then not that far up. Gonna do the same thing on the other side. Okay. Now, going to try and keep this thickness going all the way along the archway. So by doing that, I know I'll need to arch the top of the arch to be here, and then about right there is going to be the inside of the arch. Now with this arch, I'm going to be cutting off this top corner here, but I wanted to keep it about the distance of these. So that triangle piece. And then down about there. Now I'm going to complete the inside of the arch with the width in mind. So this arch is a little lopsided because I noticed that I made this side thinner than that side, so I can actually shear down the inside of this part. Make it a little bit more uniform. Depending on how thick you want your archway, you can turn this into 1 or 2 by simply slicing in half. However, the foam that I'm using was not uniform in thickness. So we have a little bit different size, so I'm going to try and make them the same size. Which I got lucky with the way that I was carving my foam. There's actual lines in this styrofoam that are already pre-measured, and I just need to shave off this outside line. And then there should be about the exact same width. But yeah, I'll do that first. So we can start shaving from there. This is just slicing along the glue line of this type of styrofoam. Everybody else might have to actually measure, but I got lucky with the design of the styrofoam. Okay, so there's your one layer. Okay, now I'm going to start rounding off the edges, that way they're more of an arch rather than just a doorway. Okay, and now that we have basic archway shape, and smoothed around in the edges. Now to round off the edges, unless you want it to be a protruding stone one. I like my arches to be rounded because I like to always imagine them along a pathway instead of in a building. So you can make them rounded so they weather the actual weather better. A round pillar will deflect wind easier than a flat one. I always start by rounding off the actual, I'll call them legs of the archway, the downward parts, because sometimes you don't need to round off the top parts as much if the bottom parts look really well with that smooth transition towards the squared off rounded part at the top. So I always wait until after I've rounded the leg parts until I see where the actual arch is. And I don't even shave off very much of these ones. I'm only shaving off the very tips of the corners because it would still have to be sturdy. So if these were round poles going up in an archway into archways, they wouldn't be as sturdy as the thicker legs being necessary, also being rounded. So I always make sure to shave off as little as possible when I do these types of legs. Okay. Looking at it though, the arch on this one is probably going to need to be rounded off. It's a little too jagged on different areas. The inside one is where you gotta be the most careful because I'm using a sawing motion in order to cut through this, and I'm having to use every 1 or 2 saw motions, shift it in my fingers in order to actually give that archway. Otherwise you end up cutting into it, and you gotta be careful about that. It would not be the first time I accidentally cut a location that was not supposed to be cut, and it didn't turn out right. But I ended up salvaging those pieces because there were pillars that I've made previously, and you can turn them into broken pillars provided that cut is not too extreme. There we go. We have our simple pillar. Now I am going to go a little bit further on this one because pillars are pretty simple. Or not pillars, archways. And I'm going to put some cross marks into these along the upper parts, and then going along this way to make it look like they're potentially runes or something along those lines. So I'm just going to cut a little tiny piece out. Again, and if you want, you can actually, by doing this, wrap it all the way around and make it very intricate. But every time you do those types of things, it does make it weaker, or in this case lighter, so easier to blow over, because it already wants to blow over. So I'm going to do these back and forth little V's into it, so that way it can make a nice. No, you can't see that at all, can you? Where's all this extra light coming from? Can't really see it. 1 second. Okay. Can't see it still. Well, here, let me continue to do these real fast, and then once I do a few of them, I'll actually use a marker to show you what it looks like. I intend to have these all painted over at some point, so a little bit of marker on it shouldn't be a problem. use red. Okay, so you have your basic sides. Doesn't really seem all that super duper interesting. However, on the other side, carve these in so they're just there, and you can have them meet up at the top. Say these are filled up by magic, or if you want to do an evil version, blood sacrifice type thing. If you've seen Blade, the original Blade movie, there's an indicator for you. Or you can just have it be energy build up to this point, and then a portal appears in your archway. All by doing this is simple as cutting out little tiny wedges to make them into lines that then zigzag all the way up. They would meet at the center. Yeah. So I will continue to get this, because what I want it to be doing it this way. That'd be interesting. So now I'm aiming to mirror this side onto that side, because I have the center point here now. Which is not very difficult, because you just made those wedges and you just follow the same pattern, and since I made it really easy to see them, it's very easy to copy them. Okay. Sorry, I had to mute because the dog was about to bark like crazy. And this was not looking right to me. I realized it's because I spread out too far. But it can result in the same pattern regardless. Just not perfect. And with that, we have our zigzag pattern going all the way along, meeting up at the top. So you could easily have a portal to whatever realm necessary, whether it be divine energy filling this up, or you can make this a universal portal. Divine energy filling up to go to the plane where the gods are. You can do blood sacrifice energy to go to the 9 hells or another demonic realm. You could just do regular old energy, like just electricity wise, to access plane to plane, like on the same plane locations. So the possibilities are virtually endless when it comes to something along this simple design. And when painting onto it, you can add additional details such as individual runes inside these wedges that would allow you to, say, if you were putting in the blood sacrifices side, we'll say, now stick with that because they're red. If you needed one person to be sacrificed, then it would obviously just fill up quickly. However, if you needed multiple, you could have the runes indicating how many were needed. Even if your heroes are trying to stop it, they might get there and it's already halfway filled because they sacrificed 4 people already, and they have another 3 in the sidelines because 2 and then the final one. So it could be all sorts of ways. You can throw out an entire storyline just behind trying to stop them from sacrificing more people to access the portal. See what we got going on here. Got about another 12 to 15 minutes or so. Let's make a quick and dirty pillar. So, for the pillar, we need to make our flat base. B4. That way it's got something to actually stand on. I just noticed I made 10 little pitchfork corners over here. That's weird. Alright. Now I want to determine how high it is going to be, which in Dungeons and Dragons, every 5 feet is 1 inch. So if we want this to be approximately, it's a little bit bigger than 1 inch by 1 inch, but it's fine. So we have up to 35 feet of a pillar here. Your average indoor pillar is 10 to 20 feet, so I will go with the 20-foot one. No, I'm sorry, my math is totally off on that. I have 3.5 inches here, so that is 15, so about 20 feet actually. So I'll make it 15 feet high because that way I can fiddle with the top a little bit. So we're going to make the base that our pillar will stand on, so that way we can always have that. I like to make round pillars. So I'll start off by making quite the wedge off the edge. But at the same time I am making the base. That's actually a decent idea for a pillar. So I'm going to do, I just decided this. As I'm making these wedges, for the base, I'm going to leave a gap in the center, try to at least, so that way they can meet at the peak, at the actual point. So that way it's got the different shape than I normally do it. See if I can keep that up though. Yeah, that's 2 sides done now. So. Last one. Boom. Alright. So, this pillar is actually pretty darn sturdy. You have the base plate, the part that will actually be set on the board, which should always be about 1 inch square, give or take. And then it has the 4 sides with the, actually turns to 8 sides down here, but then it merges back into 4 sides at the opposite direction. So it's very simple. Now with this, you can, how do I put it? You can put holes through some pillars, especially if it's going to be a ritualistic one. I have a pillar that I had at one point that I carved out a dot into it, and that was the receptacle of the energy being put in that would then disperse. So for this though, I think I'm going to make it a 4 prong at the top, which is easy. You just gotta make 2 wedges cut out going at about the 45-degree angle mark. So that way you can meet at the middle. Get at the middle. And then just pull it right out. There we go. Get at the middle. Get the middle, and just pull these 2 wedges out. So now we have a 4-prong pillar at the top that starts with 8 sides. It goes 4, and then each of those 4 sides are so a prong. This can be utilized in a fairly easy way, such as this is by far the fastest little boulder I have made. But if this boulder was, say, made out of glass and or diamond or whatever crystal type that they require in order to focus energy, you can easily set it down in there, and the 4 spikes will keep it up. Now, you can, if you have a glass ball, it can make it really look nice, but you might have to worry about some support because these corners are pretty flimsy. So I would recommend using foam boulders or spheres on these. Now for the fun of it, I'm going to slice a couple of lines through this so that way you can see through the pillar itself. Not sure how well this is going to work out. I might need more light, to which I apologize for the blinding. Okay. Didn't show up as well on this side, however that's easily fixable. Okay, so in doing that, I just cut a little pathway through it, and I'll do another one on this side. That way it's got a point where you can potentially even see the energy in there. Because if you happen to have something that you can stuff in there, or heck, you can even probably do a toothpick, paint it a certain color so that way it looks like it is either glowing or is of a different type of material. You can then make it look like there's energy pulsing. This side's proving a little bit more difficult than it should be. Oh, and if you're wondering about these tiny scissors, I got them from a makeup kit. So, they have a tiny set of tiny pair of scissors if you happen to live with a female. Or somebody who likes cosplay. Alrighty. So, this is the 4-pronged pillar with slots through it, so that way you can even potentially add something on the inside of that. Because you can push these back a little bit, and you can actually get to the inside of these pillars. You can carve out a little alcove inside of it, so marble in there. You can do that, and then you can always, when painting it, you runes up each individual flat side, meeting up at this point, and then you can have going up the outside, hits something, and then goes down to the inside. So you could always have something, this being a converter type or a redirector. Not too bad for a simple pillar. So we have our archway, we have the pillar, we have the well. Damage. Turn this light off so it's not blinding you guys anymore. Good. I think that'll be pretty much it for today. We have our decayed well. Nice and short. Works pretty well for just dropping inside of a small city or town. You have your intricate pillar and then your fancy archway. Hope you all enjoyed my stream for today, and unless something else happens, I should be back again next week around the same time. Thank you. Have a great one.